Are we? There we go. Uh, 7:01, it's official. We have ourselves a meeting, and now I just messed up my technology already. That's cool because I'm trying new stuff. There we go. We have Geraldo, Mickey, Assistant Corporation Counsel Brian, and Cara with us. Is there any public participation or input? I will take that as a no.
We have no public members now.
Thank you. Hold on one second. Excuse me, Tall. I'm just emailing stuff to Brian that he could share when I prompt him to share it. And now I got the agenda up. All right. So next meeting, we will have a new introduction. We do not this meeting. We have no public participation. Have we had a chance to review the minutes, or can we review the minutes so that we can get a motion to approve them, please?
Make the motion.
Yeah, I would second the motion. I reviewed them earlier and they look fine to me.
I reviewed it also. There was something where I said the first thing where it said something that I said about just. Do this, can you remove the word just?
Hold on. Mr. Williams suggested that the elected official, blah, blah, blah. Mr. Williams said it would be important to make sure the staff just get an overview.
Yeah. Just
So
remove just.
page 2, middle paragraph, Mr. Williams said it would be important to make sure the staff members remove the word just and get an overview of the code of ethics. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Perfect.
Hold
Yeah.
on 1 second. Let me find that and then I can make that change because then they'll have to be voted on and then sent to, and then I have to send it to my assistant to post them on the website because I don't have access to that.
No problem.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put these up so everyone can see what I'm doing. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, and then we're gonna. Okay. Share the screen. All right, you said it was on page 2?
Yep, page 2, middle of the paragraph where it says Mr. Williams the second time. Mr. Williams said it would be important to make sure the staff members just extract the word just.
Yep. That has been removed. Anything else, guys? Any other changes?
Geraldo, you good with everything else?
I am. With that, I can second Kara's motion.
Excellent. So then with those adjustments, can we start this again with Geraldo's adjustments? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Cara Murphy.
Second.
Second.
Mickey seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Excellent. Now to get into the meat and potatoes, Cara was gracious to, I believe, give us a sample of pod 5. It's a rough draft. It was attached. If you have your agenda that Brian sent out,
I can put it up there if you want, Michael.
Yes, please. But it was also in the thing that Brian emailed out.
Yep.
And this is just a sample and a draft of what we're looking to do collectively. Is right now, it doesn't need to be pretty. It's the content of bullet points of what we'd be presenting or slideshows that we had discussed in the last meeting. Per chance, Brian, are you able to? Yes, you are. Hey, Brian, if the stuff with the city of Norwalk doesn't work out, you have a second job as a tech operator. So
It's always nice to have something to fall back on.
hey, listen, I value it because I just got a camera 2 years later. So, and I'm struggling tonight figuring out how to use it. So this is just a sample. I want us to, Brian, if you can scroll to the next page.
Sure.
And you just see how Cara hit just bullet points and talking points so that people can on slideshows see the easiness of, okay, these are the things that we're trying to point out. And then if we are talking over this on a video or something, we have a trigger that, oh, an advisory opinion is blah, blah, blah. Investigate complaints. This is how we do that. This is how we conduct hearings. And go through the process and make this a quick, efficient, I should say, conversation to keep people's attention spans, as well as we broke it down in pods. And so perhaps we can get it on YouTube or on a website where each pod has its own video and it's its own, 10-minute or whatever the pod warrants lesson, so that somebody's not sitting there for an hour and a half, falling asleep essentially. So I think that what Cara did captured what we were looking to do to make it concise, efficient, easy to digest for the consumer, for the staff of the city of Norwalk, for elected officials, because it's important to, when we get it out there, that it serves a purpose. And so as Brian aptly scrolls through, this is just an idea. And then after we get the content out, we can review it collectively and tweak it as necessary. But I felt if we broke it up in groups and pods, it would be less overwhelming than trying to do all 5 pods as a collective as one. So hopefully between this meeting and the next meeting, I know we had some tech issues previously, and we didn't really get a chance to set ourselves up and break off into groups, that between this meeting and the next one, we can really go to task. Brian, if you are able to pull up what I emailed you, I also had a couple of the other pods roughly put together to give people a head start. By no means is this what has to stay. I want people to take ownerships of the pods they do, and then, bring that back to the board as a whole. And this way, in the next meeting, to maximize our time, the person that takes ownership of that pod can walk us through it. And then we could have dialogue on it. If we see they missed something or we want to add something or tweak something, then we go into it, as opposed to all of us doing everything from scratch. Go ahead,
So
Harold.
this is the email, Michael.
Yep. So if you just pull up the attachments,
Is there one you want me to do first?
32-124, the middle one, I guess.
Sure.
Go in order.
And I was just going to say, I like what Cara did. Great, concise, and I like it, Cara. Good job.
I mean, my 3212 is going to be a long one with a lot of slides because of how complicated it is. But if you looked at 3217, it's only 1 page. So I think for everybody, it's going to be, different each time.
And just so everyone can see what Cara is talking about, you can see 3212 is a bunch of pages, but again, it's also by far the longest of the.
You're not
sections.
sharing that. You're not sharing that screen.
Yeah.
There it is.
No.
You're sharing the email screen.
Still?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hold on. You might want to rescind that offer about tech. thing.
Yeah. I spoke too soon. Sorry.
Alright,
I believe
how's
in the
this?
trial run. There we go. Now we're on it. Yep.
Okay.
This
So I
is
mean,
the-
this is, as you can see, 3217 is only 1 page with 2 bullet points and 2 sub bullet points. So most of the sections that we have are going to be fairly limited in terms of their breadth. 3212 is by far the largest and most comprehensive of all the sections, and probably presents the most pitfalls for people because of how complex it is and all the moving parts and all the different requirements. And so that one kind of stands out on its own. The other ones, while they can be complex, they're much shorter.
Yeah, and so if you pull up what I had said, the 3212, it's again, it's another example, but I want somebody to take ownership of it. I by no means am taking ownership of this. I just wanted to have additional examples. You know, again, it just hits bullet points as you scroll through and gives talking points to each section. And in some ways, I might have added too much detail or repeated the code too much. Hence, somebody can take ownership. But just wanted to give an example of how the different pods can look. And then once we have that done, then we can make it a whole, have it look good and have it flow as far as a presentation goes. But does anybody have any thoughts or questions, just having seen how this can look with the bullet points and from a presentation and sharing information standpoint?
I'm good with what they're comfortable with what's presented.
Yeah, I think I would be, agreeable to Michael picking out the pods and just assigning each person a pod.
Mhm.
Except for Cara. I think she already did her pod. So,
No, Cara's good. Yep.
Yeah, the other thing is when I sent out the email with the pods, and obviously you guys can manipulate them how you want. In terms of fairness, I tried to divvy them up. So, for example, you can see that 32.4 in this grouping is a couple pages, and that's the conflicts of interest, which is probably the one that would, cause the most issues for people in terms of complexity besides 32.12. And so we tried to separate out 32.8, which is prohibited gifts, 32.4 conflicts of interest, and 32.12, so that somebody wasn't having to handle two of the most complicated ones. So we tried to give easier sections to people along with one complicated section so that nobody was bearing the brunt of some of these. So that's why they were broken up the way that they were.
Yep.
My only other suggestion would be that when you do a section, that's one individual PowerPoint. And then another section is another individual PowerPoint, so that when Brian or the folks in IT try to merge all the different PowerPoints together, it makes it easier for them.
That's a tech savvy thing, would have never crossed my mind.
And again, I think just based on my experience having to do some of these security seminars where you do them virtually that have a PowerPoint presentation, perhaps there's a way not only to do what Cara just said, but also to have somebody say, well, yeah, you can click in, log in to the system and start the process. And if you happen to get through 32.1, 2, and 3, and then something comes up or you run out of time, you can stop where you are. And then when you start up again, you'll be at the next section, which is 32.4, so that it's the same login credentials, same login information. And as you progress, it will show that you're progressing. And then when you're done through all 18 sections, you'll get a certification at the end so that you can break it up as you feel comfortable and as much as you can tolerate in one sitting. And then you can always go on to the next thing.
Right. And just my standpoint, before we over concern ourselves with the implementation and the tech behind the implementation, is I want to have us get the content out, be good with it, and then we can tweak the presentation, if you will, but without the content to share and us all approving it, it's almost putting the cart before the horse and overwhelming us to get to the presentation component. I do think it's good, as both Cara and Brian just mentioned, to think of the end result as we're putting it together. Imagine us, whether presenting it in a YouTube or a live Zoom session, as you put it together, so you feel comfortable with the pod that you're taking ownership of. And then, with that being said, focus right now on the content of it. And and to be clear, it's similar to when we did the citizens guide. We're not reinventing the wheel. We already created the code is what it is. The citizens guide is what it is. So we're not changing anything. It's now just how we're going to present it, what talking points we want to hit, what we want people to see, in that sense. So again, I reinforce, we're not changing the content. We're not changing the translation. We're not taking the code or the citizens guide and making it even more layman's terms. It's we have those to work from, and now it's just in a clean cut way, broken down, without going through all the legalese, of just giving a as smooth as possible presentation. Does that make sense? How I'm projecting and portraying that?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, excellent. I'm going, just bear with me. I'm pulling up Brian's email that had the pods broken down. Dum-da-dum-da-dum. Here we go. All right, so Cara took ownership of pod 5, thanks to her. That I would say is one of the probably the most difficult one. Actually, Brian, to make this easier, can you pull up the pod breakdown? You had sent it out, or March 24th, I believe. I'm looking at what date your email initially was. I have it in an email on March 24th, but
Michael, I don't know if it's you or me, but you're I'm losing you quite a bit lately, and I don't hear anything.
Geraldo, Cara, I have no
I hear
idea.
you clearly.
Huh?
I hear you clearly.
I hear you clearly. So,
Mickey, it's not me, it's you.
Okay, I guess so.
I've always wanted to say that, sorry. Thank you for the opportunity. If it continues to struggle, let me know. I'd want to make sure you hear this. So as we look at the pods on the left hand of the screen, Cara took ownership and took care of number 5. Geraldo and Mickey, before I just appoint them to you, do you have a preference if you each take one of these pods, which ones you'd like to take ownership of?
I don't have a
Yeah.
preference.
I don't even recall what's on. What are the 32 1 and 2s? But I'm comfortable with doing the first one.
All
And
right,
I'm
so-
supposed to be doing it with Lori, right?
Yep, and so Mickey, just from the standpoint of, since Geraldo took one with 3 without me knowing the ins and the outs, why don't you take ownership of pod 3? Which has
Okay.
32-7, 32-8, 32-16. And actually, we have a newcomer and Lori. Those are the only 2 people not on this call, is Patricia and Lori. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We have, as of like a week ago, we now have 6 members to the Board of Ethics, because Pat was approved and appointed and approved. And she will be, for anybody who didn't hear, she'll be at our next meeting. She had a prior engagement tonight.
No, we greatly appreciate her being approved and certainly understand that she was not prepared to set this meeting aside. That is very okay. We look forward to having her next month.
I
So
can
yeah,
tell you
so-
from a conversation that she's very excited to be working with all of you. She's very excited to join.
Wonderful. So yeah, so and I'll take pod 4. So that, if Geraldo, you have pod 1, Mickey, pod 3, I've already kind of done 2. I'll do pod 2 and 4, and then we can bring it back to the the group next month and take time to just scroll through the pods and feel comfortable. I want to reiterate, I don't think this meeting needs to be too long, that we're just hitting bullet points and not reinventing material. The material's already there, already created. It's how we want to present it. And while you're putting it together, just imagine, I'm going to say, great, you did pod 1. All right, take a 10-minute YouTube video. We're going to record you. How would you, talk it through? So do your best to have that in the back of your mind as you're creating it. I'm not going to put you on the spot in the meeting and expect a YouTube video ready to go. That's down the road, but I just, as you're creating it, just have that in the back of your mind, and then we'll go from there. Any questions? Does that sound reasonable and fair for to do that in the next month? And if you want to bounce it off, Geraldo, I know you'll be working with Lori. Mickey, if you want to bounce it off me or Cara, and Geraldo the same thing, feel free to shoot emails out, not to everybody. Let's not have a group project on this as far as the collective, but feel free to shoot it out to 1 or 2 of us as a colleague to say, hey, what do you think? And just bounce it off each other, and, be prepared come the May meeting.
Now, a question I have, being an attorney, I could probably talk, 45 minutes on my pod. And so are we going to have a limit on how long we should be talking?
Mickey, being an attorney, you could talk 45 minutes on the definitions section, just that one little part. For time limit perspective, I'd really like to, certain pods not all pods are created equal. But my thought is 10 to 15 minutes per pod. Certainly, a pod might warrant 20, and the pod 2 with definitions warrants, the definitions part warrants 2 minutes. So I don't want to, I don't want it to turn into a half hour per pod, because if you think about that, then we're an hour and a half, 2 hours. But try a 10 to 15 minute window, and depending on the different sections, getting into the gift part, or 3212, the longer parts, if it warrants 15 to 20 minutes, it warrants it. I don't want to shortchange those, but some of them, like definitions, conflict of interest, will probably be a little longer. And there's a couple sections, but like definitions or violations, there's certain ones that can go a little quick. So
Yeah.
on the straightforward ones, go quick. The ones that warrant, more in-depth, take the time to be concise. But in the back of your mind, for the shorter pods, 10 to 15 minutes. For longer pods, maybe 15 to 20. You certainly won't have a penalty if you're 22 minutes, 25 minutes. It just means more screen time and more holes that we could poke. So think of that ballpark, Mickey.
Okay.
Does that make sense to work for you as well, Geraldo?
Yeah, but I think the 1 and 2 with the definition, etc., that's like a breeze. You don't need a lot of coverage on that, because the definition is the definition. It's mainly on 4 with the conflicts of interest.
Well, that's why I didn't give that one to Mickey, because he would turn the definitions into, well, it depends on how you interpret this definition, and legally that could work in this context, but it could also mean this in that context.
I'll send an email out to you guys, just to let you know, after the meeting's over. I'll send it to everybody. May 26th is our next meeting. So you have basically, let's just say this week is over. We have 1, 2, 3. We have about 3.5 weeks before our next meeting.
Mhm.
And so I would need to post the agenda by May 25. So if you could just get me whatever it is that you have by May 25, so we could get it up, because we need at least 24 hours prior to the meeting for it to be. So we're good.
And just so I say this up front to everybody, so nobody thinks I'm singling them out. 2 weeks is May 12th. I will be reaching out around May 12th, not necessarily exactly on May 12th, but I'll probably reach out to each of you just to check in, see how, if you started, if you forgot, if life came and you hadn't had a chance to get to it with Mother's Day and such. Certainly understand, but then this way we can recenter and take advantage of the last 2 weeks. If you did get a chance to, start it or make good progress, feel free to share it at that point and get a second set of eyes on it. But in 2 weeks, around May 12th, I'll reach out just to check in with everybody so nobody thinks I'm singling them out. All right.
Cool.
Is there any other business that anybody would like to bring up, discuss, get into?
Well, I just have a question. On a scale of 1 to 10 on being tech savvy, I'm about a 2 or 3. So if you could kind of give me, well, we're going to have all these pods. We're going to have each individual, member of the board speaking for 15, 20 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever. And how is that all put together? I guess that's my question. How would that be put together? Once we get to the point where we say, okay, we've done our first run through it and it looks good. Now let's do one for the final or whatever you might call it. So how is it all put together?
Well, probably me fielding that isn't the right one. I'm not gonna put that. I'm gonna take a stab. I'll let Kara correct me, and then Brian can throw in points since he knows the back end probably as well or better than the rest of us. The stab is, and this is up to this isn't concrete. When we have the material, I want us to trial and error putting it together, and we might think YouTube and each of us doing a pod breaks it up, but there may be some other solution we get to once we have it. I believe the goal right now is per pod or per section maybe, but per pod have the presentation that we've shown, the PowerPoint presentation, and have the ability that those hit bullet points that people can see, and then we get to voice over or be on live video walking through it, ad-libbing. And that will be your 10 to 20 minute video. In theory, they will be broken up so that somebody doesn't click and have to watch pod 1 through 5 in an hour. It could be, hey, 20 minutes here, watch pod 1, 20 minutes, watch pod 2, 10 minutes, watch pod 3, and this way it's broken up. And if you want to put a couple together because you have an hour, great. But it breaks it up. And so as far as the tech component of that I'll leave to Kara or Brian, how people merge that once we record it.
I see.
I'm gonna
Okay.
Refer to the city of Norwalk's IT team as to how they want to do that.
Yeah, once you guys have the bullet points put together, perhaps we can have somebody from IT, if it's the May meeting that you want them to be there. Whenever you want someone from IT to be there, we can bring them to the meeting that you want them there, and then you can explain what you want to do, and they can advise you what is the easiest way for you guys to accomplish what it is that you want to do.
So my thoughts related to that are, between now and the May meeting, we create the content. The May meeting, we collectively review the content. And in my idea, when we go through May, it's to scroll through and somewhat check for grammatical stuff. Maybe if they miss something that somebody thinks is important, say, hey, you forgot to mention, some very important thing in your group. Okay, cool. But not redo it for the person that spent all the time on it, just a second, third set of eyes. If we get through that in May, then maybe the June meeting before we break for summer, have them come for the June meeting and say, okay,
Right.
this is how we can put it together. This is how it works. And then that might give us the summer into September to say, okay, we meet, in small groups and record it individually, and then have that ready to go for September and, start putting it together then. So I think that would be the rough timing, and of course, subject to change based on life and city events or other things that may come up. Does that seem to work? Does that answer your question, Mickey?
It does, but part two of my question is, would this be audio and video or just audio?
Well, there will be a dress code, but you won't be seen. The background's key, and you excel at that, so we'll all ask you to help us with the background. But no, right now my thought is audio, like more of a voiceover thing. I don't think people need to see us or see me read a monitor and go over it. I think it's more they can see the PowerPoint presentation and just hear our voices talking over it. So that is my thought off now. Again, this isn't concrete. It's open to the collective. And once we put it together and test out that voiceover, if we say, oh, wow, that's really dry, seeing seeing a face every now and again to put a face to the name or something, maybe, but a voiceover is the idea. Does that work?
Fine. I'd be inclined to think that I'd rather see a person and a voice from that person at least every once in a while. You'd have the PowerPoint on the screen, but then flip back to the person once in a while. Maybe it'll also wake up the people watching too. I don't know.
And that's where I think when we get to that part, we could dry run it, one way and another way. I clearly don't have an issue with my face being around town, apparently. So,
Really?
thank you, Geraldo, for laughing. I appreciate that.
We
but,
we wave every time we pass one of your signs,
and I wave back, thank you. So yeah, I think that's a dry run, and to see how it plays out and comes off. I think it might break it up. Equally, I think just having a video on us for 20 minutes as we talk can be equally sleep inducing. So it might be the breaking it up, as you mentioned, not one or the other. Any other comments or input? Otherwise, we're going to keep this meeting nice and efficient.
Do we have question? Do we have distribution of all the pods?
The pods?
Yeah, did we have?
So what I will do when this ends, what I emailed Brian, the pods that I roughly did, I will send out just so everybody has it. And I will also, Cars was already included, but I'll include hers just so you can have it as a reference point. I'll speak for myself and what I did. By no means did what I put together intend to be the final copy. I just wanted an additional example above and beyond Cars. And so yeah, so I will, when this meeting ends, email those out to everybody, and you can have those as a reference point. But certainly, I think Geraldo and Mickey, you're both doing pods, or definitely Geraldo, Mickey, you might not be, are doing pods that I touched on. Feel free to start from scratch or build on mine. I take no offense if you completely do it over and take ownership of it.
And what I was looking at, do we have somebody assigned to all the pods, or all the pods?
So hold on, I'm just pulling it back up. I believe Geraldo, you were doing pod 1. Mickey was doing pod 3. Car did pod 5. I was gonna take a stab at 2 and 4, and then go from there. And Geraldo, you'll work with Lori on your pod, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Because we may have, as long as we have, if there's any that's not accounted for, we should know, so we could, see how we distribute those too.
Yeah,
What's all
well, what's the reality of what's going to happen is, for the two that I'm taking ownership of, I will finish up pod 2. I did a rough cursory thing already. I will then do pod 4, and then I will probably consult with, email it out to various one of you and say, okay, hey, can you put a second set of eyes on this, and essentially team up with selective people just to make sure that I didn't completely miss the boat, and then have that ready to present when we get together in May.
Okay.
And again, I would encourage both you, Geraldo, and you, Mickey, to, when you put yours together, feel free, once you have it together, whether when I check in May 12th or the week after, say, here, Car, can you have a second set of eyes? Or here, Mickey, or here, Michael, can you just a second or third set of eyes? And, then let's just be on the same page. So when we get to May, I'd like it to be similarly efficient to this meeting, in that we stay on task, and we don't go turn this into a 3-4 meeting event of redoing the content. I'd rather spend that time. I don't mind if we take 2 to 3 meetings to actually fine tune the presentation itself, but I want to have the content, really ideally done at the end of May, if possible, maybe a final tweak or two. But that's my idea. Spend the time on the presentation itself, not on this content per se. Does that work?
Good. Works for me.
Yep. Works.
Excellent. Any other comments, concerns, questions before we have a motion to adjourn?
Do we have any new business?
No new business. Next month, we'll have a new introduction, which will be great and wonderful. Fresh blood and fresh energy and fresh ideas. She doesn't know this, but really, I'm gonna give her pod 2 and 4. And she'll be getting an email right after this, like, congratulations, you drew the short straw. But unless she watches this YouTube video, she won't know that. And we'll make a joke about that next month. But nope, that's all we got for today. So is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Everybody jump at once. Geraldo second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion moves. Thank you all. Everybody have a good start to May. A happy Mother's Day. Hopefully some warm weather comes, and stay healthy.
Be safe, everybody.
Best wishes to all. Take care.
Thank you,
Be safe.
Brian. Thank
Be
you all.
safe. Bye.